Now I have about 12 or 13 stories.
Okay.
And they all end in a punchline in that way. I made that story very short, but a lot of the stories, if you put in the original monologue and then the full story, they could go 30 minutes or 45 minutes or even up to an hour. And I did this at the National Arts Center last year. And one of my friends who came to see it afterwards, we were out having a bite to eat, and he said, you know, Sunshine, that is the longest joke I have ever heard in my entire life. But he's right, it is like a very, very long, elaborate jokes. One of my favorite stories, and the first story I ever saw, is the story of Jugemu, which is about the child with a very long name. His name is Jugemu, Goko ono surikiri, kaijari suigyo no sungyo matsu, ungyo matsu, hurai matsu, kuneru tokoro, nisumu tokoro, yaburakoji, burakoji, paipo no shuringan no gurindai no pompokopi no pompokona no chokyume no chosuke. And one day his neighbor Kin-chan comes to pick him up for school. And Kin-chan says, Jugemu, goko no surikiri, kaijari suigyo no sungyo matsu, ungyo matsu, hurai matsu, kuneru tokoro, nisumu tokoro, yaburakoji, burakoji, paipo no shuringan no gurindai no pompokopi no pompokona no chokyume no chosuke. Time to go to school. And Jugemu's mother came out and said, Arama Kin-chan, you're so nice, but our Jugemu goko no surikiri, kaijari suigyo no sungyo matsu, hurai matsu, kuneru tokoro, nisumu tokoro, yaburakoji, burakoji, paipo no shuringan no gurindai no pompokopi is still sleeping. Wait here, I'll wake him up. Jugemu, goko no surikiri, kaijari suigyo no sungyo matsu, hurai matsu, kuneru tokoro, nisumu tokoro, yaburakoji, burakoji, paipo no shuringan no pompokopi no chosuke. Wake up, Kin-chan is here to pick you up. I'm sorry, Kin-chan. Jugemu, king kong kong, king kong kong, ma'am. His name is so long, school for today is already finished. You know what, but the great thing about Rakugo is you go out and you do a kind of monologue, and we do this in Japan as well, because a lot of people are seeing Rakugo for the first time. You kind of explain Rakugo in a funny way. So you're getting laughs and you're doing your kind of monologue, but you're also using the opportunity to explain some of the rules of Rakugo to make it very easy when you get into the story for people to understand. So it's actually, it's a kind of art form that can be immediately familiar to people without any effort at all. You know, there are Rakugo families, and these are basically descendants of the original Rakugo storytellers. So my master is Katsura Bunshi, but we can trace, he's Bunshi the 6th, so we can trace him right back, way back, several hundred years back to Bunshi the 1st. And their descendants, they're not actually, usually not actual children, and not like Kabuki where they're actually a family. But when you become an apprentice to a master, you become part of his Rakugo family. And so I could trace my Rakugo family tree back, right back to Bunshi the 1st. There are certain vague differences of styles, but there's nothing written in stone that if you're Hayashiya, you do this style, but if you're Katsura, you do this style. It's more based on what kind of a Rakugo storyteller your master is, because the kind of master that he is going to dictate a lot about what kind of apprentices join him. For example, my master doesn't do any traditional stories. He writes all his own stories, and he's possibly the most prolific writer of Rakugo stories in history. He's written over 230 stories now. So a lot of people like myself are attracted to his new stories. We want to do his stories, and we also want to create our own stories, so we join him. But we also do traditional stories, and we'll go to other masters to learn the traditional stories as well, or he'll teach us some of the traditional stories as well. So it's a little bit, it's not set in stone or very, very strict, but people that are kind of interested in writing their own stories are going to often be attracted to a master who writes his own stories. A lot of people think that you have to adapt Rakugo. When you do it in English, you have to adapt it for a Canadian audience, adapt it for the American audience, adapt it for Westerners. And what I've found doing it is the less you adapt, the closer you get to being exactly as we do it in Japanese, the better reaction we get. And you know, it's a tradition that's lasted for 400 years, so you just need to trust the tradition. So I'm basically just translating the stories and trying to do them with the same kind of rhythm in English as I would do them in Japanese. when it comes to finer points of Japanese culture, even people in Japan now don't really know those points. So the Rakugo storyteller uses his monologue to kind of set up the story that way. So when I do it in English, I can set it up in the same way. It's really not. It's a very, very adaptable art form, and the less you adapt it, the better. And there's a lot of puns there's certain Rakugo storytellers that are a lot of puns, and those, you're right, are really hard to translate. But not all the stories depend on puns. A lot of the stories are very, very story-based that really don't have that many puns at all. And so if you take out the stories that have puns in them, the rest of the stories are very easy to translate. And at first, because I got this blonde hair and sometimes I wear a Canadian kimono and I got a white face and I speak with an accent, at first people found it a bit of a novelty. So when I came out, it was like, ooh, but now, my face is on the posters, and I'm on TV now a lot. I have a few regular television programs, etc. So people are really used to me, and the Japanese audiences are starting to take me for granted, which I really appreciate. I really like that because I feel like now I'm not special. I'm just one of the 700 storytellers, and I hope they enjoy my story just like they enjoy everybody else's stories. Yeah, I am the only foreign storyteller who's done the apprenticeship, received a Rakugo name, and is practicing as a professional storyteller, yes. My hope is that in 20 or 30 or 40 years, lots of foreigners will follow me into this work and become great storytellers, and just like the present day world of sumo wrestling, all the best storytellers will be foreigners. Hopefully, right now nobody really knows the word Rakugo, but hopefully, like sushi and sashimi and more ramen and now maybe izakaya. Just like these words, someday Rakugo will be a common part of the English vocabulary. Life in Japan is very little free time. They say bimbo himanashi. I'm really, really busy and really, really poor for some reason. Yeah, but life in Japan is great. Life in Japan is great. I wake up in the morning, and because it's not my original culture, it's not my original language, I wake up in the morning, walk out the door, and I'm learning something. And especially now I'm living in Ise, and Ise has the most famous, most important temple, the Ise Shrine, which contains the goddess Amaterasu Omikami, the sunshine god, which I only found out when I got there.
Who gave you that name, Sunshine?
I got the name from my master. Every Rakugo storyteller gets a name from his master. And my master's name at the time, he recently changed his name, at the time was Katsura Sanshi. And so all of his apprentices have this san, which means three in Japanese, right? Every one of his apprentices has that kanji. And then the second letter, or the second kanji of everybody's name changes. So we have Sanzo, Sampo, Sankin, Sanko, and then I'm San. You'd read it in Japanese, it would be Sanki, but my master changed the ki, which means shine. He changed it to the English pronunciation, so it's sunshine. So I'd be San, she's deshi, sunshine. I was so happy when my master gave me this name, because he was actually thinking in the future, when he gave me this name, in the future that I would be performing in Canada, in the United States, in Europe. And he wanted to give me a name that didn't just make sense in Japanese, that also made sense when I came here. And it's just a great name to have. When I introduce myself as Sunshine, it doesn't matter if people are Japanese or Canadian, everybody puts a smile on their face and they say, "You're not Sunshine." I say, "Yes, I am. Please call me Sunshine." It's great to be able to make people smile just by saying your name. We're kicking off a 20-city tour. We're kicking off in Vancouver this weekend with 3 shows in 3 different spots, including the final show in Vancouver on Sunday at one of my favorite theaters in all of Canada, Vancouver East Cultural Centre, otherwise known as La Culture. And I can't wait to perform there. It's been a dream to perform there for a long time. We're going all over Canada, all over the United States, ending in Toronto on October 5th at one of the most gorgeous theaters possibly in the world. It's the beautiful and historic Winter Garden Theatre at 8 p.m. on October 5th. It's also been my dream to perform there. So this is a kind of sunshine dream come true tour.